And welcome back. My next guest is Bill Brace, an Army veteran from the Vietnam War era. Welcome, Bill.
Welcome, George. Thank you.
So, Bill, thanks for joining us. And as you know, in this segment, we really like to put a focus on one of our veterans who lives within our community. And I've known you for a number of years now. Your wife, Janet, works here in Town Hall, and a great asset to our town. And you've been very, very involved with the Marine Corps League, the American Legion, and you're a Vietnam-era veteran. And so we'd really like to, kind of put a focus on you and kind of some of the things that you've been involved with. So maybe just for the benefit of our viewers, you could speak just a little bit about your background. Where were you born?
I was born in Manhattan, Hell's Kitchen, 50th Street between 10th and 11th Avenue. If you're familiar with it, it's close to where Madison Square Garden used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I think, Sacred Heart Parish is not
correct.
Too far, yeah, not too far from
yes, that was the old parish.
Yeah, absolutely, the old heydays, huh? So how long have you been living up here in Clarksdale?
We bought our house up here in 1981, so that makes it 36 years.
Wow.
Boy, time flies.
Wow. And so what made you guys decide to come up to Clarkstown, Rockland County?
Well, we were married for about 13 years and decided that it was about time to get out of an apartment. So we started looking, and when we got to here, we had friends who lived in Pearl River. They suggested we come up. We looked around and fell in love with the area. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's history.
Right. And so maybe let's just speak a little bit about your experience as a Vietnam-era veteran. Now, you're not a combat vet,
Correct.
But you did serve. What branch of the military did you serve in?
I enlisted in 1967 into the Army. I was going to college at the time, young 19-year-old, decided to had enough for school and joined the Army.
Right. And so tell me about your experience during that time, as you were preparing. So you joined as a 19-year-old. Where did you do basic training? And
Fort Gordon, Georgia, the 12-week course there. Then I went to Fort Bliss, Texas for 8 months training as a Nike Hercules electronics maintenance technician. Mm-hmm. After that, I graduated from that school, went to Minnesota for approximately a year. And after that, approximately a year in Germany as an advisor at a NATO site.
Wow. So you served from 66 to?
67 to 70, active duty, and 3 years reserve. So I got my honorable discharge in 73.
Right. So let's just talk a little bit about, so you were kind of a tech guy, basically?
Yes, I was a warhead specialist for nuclear weapons.
Wow, and so you can really do a lot with that when you get out of the military.
There wasn't much call for it. I couldn't find a job in that category, no.
Right, no, absolutely. They're looking for warhead specialists everywhere these days. But seriously, I mean, you really got some great foundational training and experience, I would imagine,
yes.
From the Army, as many folks do. What were some of the assignments like? I mean, you were over in Germany.
Yes.
So that must have been very interesting, particularly in that time in our country's history.
Yes, it was. You got to remember, it was approximately 20 some odd years after the war, so there was still a little bit of a resentment every now and then. And one day I did get cornered by a bunch of younger Germans and got called a baby killer and so forth and so on. But that was the era. Even when I came home, I was labeled that when I got off the plane.
Right. Talk to me just a little bit about that. Some of your other experiences in Germany. I mean, because it was pretty much at the height of the Cold War.
Correct.
And so that must have been, with the East-West divide and what was taking place. So how close? What was the proximity that you were to East Germany and?
Oh, I would say probably about 100 kilometers, 125 kilometers, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was well within the range of the missile that I was responsible for.
Right, right.
The missiles were they were tactical nuclear weapons. So again, the Russians outnumbered us in armor, and that was predominantly what was there for. Is if they decided to attack, we would launch the missiles, and they would go ground to ground, and mm-hmm. hopefully eliminate as many of them as possible.
Right. It's amazing that this was really the plan, not too long ago. I mean, it's within the last 50 years we're essentially looking at.
Correct.
small tactical nuclear weapons that we were prepared to unleash. Makes you wonder what the plans are today.
Probably similar to what they were then, but much more accurate now than they were then. That's so I would assume that the warheads yield would be smaller.
So Bill, you do your 3 years of active duty service. So you come out in 1970, I guess?
Correct.
And you go on to reserve duty. And what did you do immediately after the military?
I tried to find a job, as you pointed out. Finally found a job in the printing industry and did that for about 10 years. Went to school at nights. Well, I should back up a little. Met my wife, got married in '73. Went to school at nights, got my degree. When I got my degree, I started looking for a job in IT. That took a little bit of time also. And as I said, I started out as a trainee programmer, worked my way up for 35 years, and I was a manager of the IT area by the time I retired.
Wow. So how long have you been retired now?
Let me see, my doing it. It's 5 years.
Oh, good for you.
I retired when I was 64.
Good for you. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the activities you're involved with in the community. So I see you frequently at Eagle Scout ceremonies.
Yes.
And other veterans events as well. Certainly previously when I was over at Bridges, formerly RILC, with the Veterans Program, the Dwyer Program, I'd also bumped into you at a number of those events through Commander John Layton. So maybe just let's talk a little bit about some of the veterans activities that you're involved with and some of the other community groups.
Well, I started out with the Veterans Advisory Board at Rockland Community College. That's where I was picked up by the Marine Corps League. So I started there. Then with the Marine Corps League, I do Toys for Tots, as you pointed out, the ceremonies at the Eagle Scouts, naturalization, different honor guards and firing details. We help disabled veterans try to get transportation to Montrose, and thanks God Bridges is there because they've now picked up the slack for that, transporting the veterans across. Anything and everything. We get calls from veterans, had some work done on their house. The people who did the work had to take up the pavers. We put the pavers back down.
So let's just talk a little bit about the Veterans Advisory Program that you were involved with over at RCC. That's really I know Jonathan Barnwell is the staff person, the professor over at RCC, who's really kind of quarterbacking that, and he's done just a remarkable job.
Yes.
How many vets would you say have kind of been involved within that program?
Well, they have 150 enrolled this year.
Wow.
And it's been steadily growing, as you know, because of the downsizing of the military. So there's a lot of veterans that are coming out now, finding it difficult to find jobs, and then going back to school to enhance their training or get new training. So that's been quite a bit of growth in the last few years.
Right. And if just for the benefit of our viewers, I mean, it's really vets tend to come home. They start to get themselves reintegrated into society. Yes. And the last thing they want to do is like what you're doing now, talking about their service or their experience, particularly the guys that have experienced.
Have seen combat, correct.
Seen combat. And so why is it important for a group like the Veterans Advisory Council and over at RCC to exist?
What you hit on the key, that they're reluctant to talk about their experience, so they may want to talk more openly to another veteran who has similar experiences. And also that person can, I'll use the word for lack of a better, mentor them and stuff, and share their experiences and try to guide them into a path that might be easier for them to reacclimate to society.
And let's also just talk a little bit about the Marine Corps League, because it's a great group.
Yes.
And I know that as I go to different events, particularly Eagle Scout events, and then the naturalization ceremonies, which we're filming this in October, early October, and there's a naturalization ceremony coming up the end of the week.
Correct.
And the Marine Corps League participates there, and I think it's just a great way in which we can show our newest citizens the sacrifice and experience of our vets because they participate, and it's great how they're kind of incorporated into the ceremony. So maybe let's just talk a little bit about the Marine Corps League and some of your involvement with them.
Well, as I mentioned before, or I should have, I met the Marine Corps League at an event at RCC. We were doing a display for Veterans Day, and they walked up to me and asked me if I wanted to join. I explained to them that I wasn't a Marine, and they said, we'll take you anyway. You know, we'll mentor you. So I started there, and as I was amazed at all of the activities that they're involved in. I mean, I thought Toys for Tots was the only thing that they did.
Right.
They help with Habitat for Humanity. They help other veterans groups. They do fundraisers for veterans. If you recall recently, those Marines from Stewart, they had fundraisers for there. They helped family members, you know, during their time of crisis, so to speak, and raise funds to try to tide the people over until things were done. It's just amazing what they do. Vans for disabled veterans. They got an old van, fixed it up, had somebody retrofit it so that it could be used as a handicap van. I mean, they're everywhere as far as I can see.
Right, they really are.
Yeah.
They really are, and they're great. They're really a great group. I mean, and they do so much behind the scenes
Yes.
that people are unaware of. And I especially like when they go to the Eagle Scout ceremonies. I happen to try and get to as many Eagle Scout ceremonies as possible. You know, it's the highest rank that a Boy Scout can attain. Less than 1% of all kids
Correct.
that get involved with Scouting end up as Eagle Scouts. So they're kids that have been persistent and have kind of followed through throughout their childhood, and typically just as they're coming to the end of high school, or latter 2 years of high school or beginning of college, they're hitting the Eagle Scout, doing their project and attaining it. And so these Eagle Scout, Eagle Court of Honors are really an opportunity to celebrate their accomplishments, and the Marine Corps League is always there. There's always a representative from the American Legion, and there's always a representative from the Marine Corps League who are recognizing the Scouts, and it's really a unique, I think, a unique marriage between the two. The two groups, between veterans and between the Eagle Scouts.
Eagle Scouts, yes.
So, Bill, we're almost out of time, but just let's talk a little bit about some of your other volunteer experience. I know you're involved with some other work through Senator Carlucci's office as well.
Yes.
Tell us what you're
Well,
involved with.
he has occasionally he has campaigns where he goes along and helps clean up the 304, and you'd be amazed at what you can find
Right.
that people have. And I can't believe that they were able to throw it out of a moving vehicle. So I helped there, and he also has a senior advisory board. Again, he gets out there and tries to do what he can do. I also work at the food cupboard for St. Paul's. We get a truckload of approximately 10 to 15,000 pounds worth of goods, foods, meats, and so forth. And I get to jump on the back of the truck, unload it, put it in the van, the carts, cart it out, take it out, put it into the storage rooms. I just want to try to keep myself busy, and I want to try to give back to the community and the country. I mean, I have no complaints as to where I am in life, and I look around and see other people that I can help, and I'll just jump in and do it when I can, and as long as I can.
That's great. Well, Bill, I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest on our program, and more importantly, I want to thank you for your service to our country and your service to our community here through the various veterans organizations and the not-for-profits that you're involved with. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, George.
Thanks so much. Coming up next, Clarkstown's Police Chief Raymond McCullough.